Today we're going to quickly go over how to make your histogram. Step 1, order your data from least to greatest. Second step, we're going to make an interval and frequency table. Next, you build your histogram. And finally, you're going to check for title, labels, and readability. Let's take a look. Step 1, ordering our data from least to greatest. This is the data set I'm doing as an example because it's different than anything that you guys have as students. So I'm going to order this data from least to greatest. Let me quickly do that. Looks like my lowest numbers are in the 60s. I've got a 66, another 66, and a 68. Always do this step in pencil in case you make an error because you don't want to waste your time redoing the entire thing. Okay, looks like next I've got 70s, I've got 73, 2 76s, also super important to check off your data as you find it, and then a 79, and then I've got 80, 81, and 82. I missed my 42. And then 87 and 89. And I can see that I made an error, and I can see what that error is that I need my 42 right here. I'm just going to write it in. And now it makes sense that I've got all my data accounted for. So always double check, and if you have an error, you have to figure out what it is, and if you're going to need to rebuild your whole line, or if you can just make an adjustment. In this case, since it was right on the end, the data point I missed, I was able to just make an adjustment. So I've completed step 1. I have ordered my data from least to greatest. Next, I'm going to make an interval and frequency table. So the interval, students, means the grouping that you want to group your numbers in. So you have to think about your data and make a decision. You're the decision maker here. If my data is in the thousands, then maybe my grouping is in the hundreds. Or maybe I'm working with groups of 50. Maybe I'm working with groups of 20. Maybe I'm working with groups of 10s or 5s or 1s. This is where you, as the mathematician, you're the decision maker. You have to think about your data and what type of grouping makes sense. Well, hundreds certainly don't make sense for mine. It would just be one group that wouldn't make any sense at all, wouldn't help me understand my data. Likewise, ones would take too much space. So when I'm looking at my data, it goes from the 40s up to the 90s. I think I can use 10s, but yours might be different. You are the decision maker. You have to think that over carefully. Once I've decided what type of grouping I'm going to use, I'm going to go ahead and set up my table. So it's like a T-chart. On one side, the left side, you have your intervals. And then on the right side, you have your frequency. Frequency just means how many times did that occur. The interval means what is the grouping. There is a little pitfall that students sometimes fall into. So if I decided to do 10s, don't write this down. I'm going to make a mistake, and then I'm going to show you why it's a mistake. So sometimes students will put in a grouping like this. They'll say, well, I'm doing 10, so I'm going to do 0 to 10, and then I'm going to do 10 to 20, and then I'm going to do 20 to 30. This is not the way. No. Here's why. Right now, 10 is in 2 locations. It's in 2 groups, and that's not okay. I can only count my 10s once. So the way you want to do it is you want the first number in your grouping to be counting by whatever is your group. So if I'm counting by 10s, I'm going to start from 0. My next group is going to start with 10. My next group is going to start with 20. And then it's going to go 0 to 9. And then the next group will be 10 to 19, the teens, 20 to 29. The next group starts at 30 to 39. The next group starts at 40 to 49. The next group starts at 50 to 59. The next group 60 to 69. The 60s, then 70 to 79, 80 to 89, and 90 to 99. Now I need to think also, for my data set, my first data point is at 42. I don't need 0 to 9. I don't need 10 to 19. I don't need 20 to 29. I'm not going to have any data in the 30 to 39 section, but I might leave it in my chart just for context. That's my decision as the mathematician. But you want your chart to be meaningful and manageable and understandable. So you don't necessarily need every single thing in there if it's not a part of your graph. And again, I'm not going to go on to the hundreds. Why? Because my last data point is 89. So now I'm simply going to look at my ordered data and I'm going to tell how many times I have a data point in this range, in this interval. Data points 30 to 39, 0. 40 to 49, just the one. 50 to 59, none. The 60s, let's see how many I have in the 60s. 1, 2, 3. 3 of my data points are a part of that interval. The 70s, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of my data points are in the 70s. How about the 80s? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 of my data points are in the 80s. It should all add up to 13 because that's how many data points I had to begin with. So 5 and 4 is 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Good. All right. That takes care of my second step, building my interval and frequency step. Next, I'm going to build my histogram. So I've got the information I need, and I'm going to put it into a chart. I'm going to start by labeling my chart in accordance to my data. My data is about resting heart rates. So I'm going to title it Resting Heart Rate. Okay. And then on the bottom, on my x-axis going across, is heart rate in beats per minute. So I'm going to write in beats per minute because that's what I'm measuring in this chart. The y-axis going up and down is the frequency, as in how many times did those intervals occur. And then I'm just going to use my information that I put on my interval chart, and I'm going to put it into my histogram. So I'm going to leave that right there where I can see it. Set up my groups. My first group is 30 to 39. I'm going to use that section for that. Next is 40 to 49, and so on, right? And that's as far as my chart is going to go. And then I'm just going to fill it in using that information. Nothing in my 30s bar. In my 40s bar, I have 1. I better have this labeled if it's by 1s or 5s or whatever. Mine is by 1s because it only goes up to 5 points. Next, in the 50s, I have 0 in the 50s. The 60s, I have 3. So in my 60s grouping, I'm going to come up to the 3 line. In the 70s, I've got 4 points. And then the 80s, there are 5. And that is all. There is my histogram. I'm going to check that it's labeled and that it's readable and call